You are space truckers carrying a supply of dangerous tritium gas when you are diverted to answer a distress call from a derelict ship that disappeared almost 80 years ago, and there's more on board than just the frozen crew. You don't get paid enough to deal with monsters, but hold your breath, count to 3. If you play your cards right with this one, you might just walk away very, very rich. Oh, who am I kidding? You're all gonna die. I'm so excited to talk about the starter set for ALIEN The Roleplaying Game. It was one of the most fun RPG experiences I've had, and I've not been able to stop thinking about it since. Before we get underway, I'll mention that while Free League very graciously sent me this starter set to review, I'm not being paid in any way. Now, let's take a look at what's in the box. There is a 104-page condensed rulebook, a 48-page cinematic adventure, 5 pre-generated character sheets, a huge double-sided map, 10 base dice and 10 stress dice, 84 game markers, and 56 cards with weapons, personal agendas, initiative, NPCs, and vehicles, so there's quite a bit in here. The rulebook explains what the game is and a bit about the world of Alien, and all the necessary rules to run the included scenario, as well as equipment and weapons beyond what are seen in the adventure. This rulebook does not have any rules for character creation, so keep that in mind. This is a big rulebook for a starter set, and it's only bound with glue, so while the quality of this box set is really high, right from the start I was worried about how this rulebook would hold up. Sure enough, even with me being very careful, the cover fell off. So far nothing else is broken, and I should be able to glue the cover back on, but be very gentle with this book. I'm not going to cover my thoughts on the rule system here, I'll save that for a future video when I review the core rulebook, but my first impressions are that it's really good, although I found it to be a pretty complicated system to learn. Even this condensed rulebook is 104 pages long, whereas the One Ring starter rulebook is only 24 pages long and the D&D one is only 32 pages. I feel like there are a lot of mechanics that I didn't use fully or at all, such as stealth mode, supply rolls, and zones, and I think that just comes from having a lot to learn off the start. This set also comes with custom dice, but you can use any d6s, just make sure they're in 2 different colors. There are 10 base dice with a custom 6 icon, and 10 yellow stress dice that have the facehugger icon in place of the 1s. The game markers can help track character and alien positions when using maps, as well as actions taken in spaceship combat. These are great, although I completely forgot to use them during my playthrough, but they definitely would have been useful. I really like the cards that come in this box. I did have a misprint on one of the cards, which has a picture of an incinerator unit but the stats for a tractor. The weapons and vehicle cards include items that won't come up in the starter scenario, which is great since they'll be useful for future adventures. However, there aren't cards for all the gear that players can use in the included scenario, which is too bad. In the Chariot of the Gods scenario, it mentions how the player who chose to play as the captain can decide which equipment to give to which players. Having the captain be able to physically give or take away gear creates a really fun dynamic. The NPC cards are also a great addition. One side has a portrait of the characters, which I was able to set out as my players encountered them, and then the other side has some basic stats, which can be used when a player's main character is horribly murdered. The double-sided map is huge and made of very thick paper. One side of the map depicts chartered space, and the other has the floor plans for the ship that most of the action will take place on in the scenario. My only complaint with a floor plan map is that there is no numbering system for the rooms. It is broken up by level, but I did find that during the game, players would say they were going to a certain room, and it would take me a while to find where that room's information was in the scenario book. Now with some of the peripheral stuff out of the way, let's talk about the Chariot of the Gods cinematic scenario. This game was so much fun. Running this was genuinely some of the most fun I've had in an RPG ever. I'm not going to go too much into specifics about the story of this adventure, but I might mention some stuff that's better not to know if you're hoping to go into this as a player. As well, some of the pages I show on screen will give away important plot points. It's probably worth mentioning here that I'm not a huge fan of the Alien franchise. I have seen the first 2 movies once about a decade ago, and I'm loosely aware of what happens in the other films. Still, there were a few things that really drew me to this RPG. The first was a focus on cinematic mode. In case you're not aware, Alien is built to be played in one of 2 modes, cinematic or campaign. Campaign is your standard RPG game that will take place over many, many sessions, while cinematic is closer to one-shots, or at least it's meant to be played over very few game sessions. I know one-shots are nothing new, but this is the first time I've seen an official focus on them. And a short game like this is really up my alley. I love the idea of campaigns that take years to play through, but I just don't have the time for that, let alone enough friends with a free schedule to make that work. So to focus on a really good system that I can try out in an evening is just perfect. Now, I absolutely butchered running the Chariot of the Gods scenario. I messed up some important story events and I didn't use a lot of the mechanics of the system, but it was still so much fun. And my players didn't notice what I missed because they were all new to the system as well. One of the things that makes the Alien cinematic scenario so fun is the pre-generated characters with secret agendas. The adventure is broken up into 3 acts. Each act, the players are given a card with their agendas. This is kept secret from the other players, and they have to try to accomplish things over the course of the game. And this is such a brilliant mechanic. It immediately gives the players goals, and since some of those goals are at odds with what another player is trying to do, tensions start rising in the best possible way. Generally in RPGs, I find it incredibly tedious when players are trying to accomplish opposing things, even when it's for story reasons. I think why I find it so annoying is that eventually the story has to move forward, and there has to be some resolution, even though there's no real way for the players to earn each other's trust. And in a long campaign, it just bogs the story down, I find. However, in an Alien game that is meant to be played in 1 or 2 sittings, the personal conflicts are actually interesting. And if the players argue for too long, something horrible is probably going to slither out of an air duct and find them. Something these secret agendas also help to do is split the party, which in most RPGs is the #1 rule you're not supposed to break. In my game of Chariot of the Gods, I have never seen a group split up so fast. The characters were very quickly all over the ship in 1s and 2s, which is a little more complicated to run the game and make sure everyone is getting equal playing time, but it also makes being hunted by an alien that much more frightening. There's one aspect about how the scenario is written that I really enjoy. The Chariot of the Gods book has different sections for important NPCs, descriptions of the rooms on the ship, and then ends with story events that will happen during each act. Instead of having events be triggered by specific locations, the events can take place wherever and whenever they need to, with a few exceptions. As well, there are some events that are mandatory for the story to progress and others that can be used or not. These aspects help the GM tailor the experience to the players and can also help with replayability. Now, I don't think an adventure really needs to have a high amount of replayability. However, that might be important to you, so I'll talk a bit about that. First off, as a GM, I certainly want to run this game again. As I mentioned earlier, I messed up a lot of important elements of this game, both narratively and mechanically, so I really want another chance at running this scenario. And even though I know all the story beats of Chariot of the Gods, I think it would be a blast getting to experience that as a player. And speaking of players, I think given a good amount of time, it would still be fun to run this game with the same people. By changing up who plays what character, choosing different optional events, or making up your own events could make the scenario a lot of fun to play again. One of the characters is also supposed to secretly be a synthetic working for a rival company. That role can be changed every game or left out entirely if you want. I also think it would be great to give a player a custom hidden agenda where they have learned that an enemy synthetic is in the crew and they have to figure out who it is. One element of this set that definitely limits its reusability is not having any character creation rules, which means you won't be able to write your own scenarios unless you're using the same pre-generated characters. I don't mind not having character creation in a starter set now as much as I used to. If those rules were included, they probably wouldn't have all the options of the core rules anyways, so if you like the game enough, you would still have to buy the full book. As long as a starter set includes an adventure as good as this one, I don't mind not having character creation rules, but I understand that might be crucial to some. So, after all that, how does the Alien starter set work as an introduction to the game or into RPGs as a whole? I'd honestly say it depends on whether you're coming to it as a player or a GM. For a player, I think it works incredibly well. The rules for players seem pretty easy to grasp, while still having enough there to be interesting. Looking at something like D&D, I find new, and sometimes even veteran players, really struggle with understanding how spells work, and even which dice to use and when. The abilities in Alien are quite straightforward, and the dice system is quick to grasp. The players I ran this for had a mix of experience with RPGs, but they all very quickly understood how to play. So even though I favor fantasy over science fiction, this channel is mostly dedicated to the One Ring after all, I kind of think I might use the Chariot of the Gods scenario to introduce new players to RPGs, because it's easy to pick up and so much fun. Now, how does this starter set work as an introduction for GMs? That I think is a little harder. I'm certainly not new to RPGs, but I still struggled with remembering to use all the mechanics in this system. As mentioned before, the condensed rulebook is over 4 times as many pages as the starter set rules for the One Ring, and over 3 times as many as D&D, which also includes some character creation options, so there's a lot to learn here. As well, while I thoroughly enjoyed the Chariot of the Gods scenario, it wasn't laid out in a way to slowly introduce mechanics to a new GM, which might make it a better adventure all around, but one that is quite a lot to take on as your first experience running this system. Looking forward to the future of Alien the Roleplaying Game, it has recently been announced that a new edition will be coming out soon. In my interview with game designer Tomas Härenstam, he mentions how it will be more of a 1.5 update than the full overhaul that calling it 2nd edition implies. But with that update will come a new starter set. So what would I like to see in that? More gear cards, or at least all of the ones that feature in whatever scenario is included. And then either a more condensed rule system or a scenario that helps walk a new GM through the different mechanics. But other than that, I think it's pretty easy to say that I highly recommend the Alien starter set. If you're a huge fan of the Alien franchise and RPGs, then this is something you will absolutely love. And even if you are someone who is just looking for something different than another fantasy RPG, this is a terrific option. I don't imagine Alien will ever be the main RPG that I play. However, it will without a doubt be one that I play again, and I cannot wait. If you like this video, or want to learn more about Alien the Roleplaying Game, I'll link my interview with the game director below. As well, over the next little while I will put up a video guide for character creation and then a review of the core rules. Thanks so much for watching, have a great day.